The world had always been in awe of Dr. Ethan Vale. A master of the cosmos, his work had once promised to stave off the creeping death that Earth faced due to its dwindling resources and escalating environmental catastrophes. Ethan was a beacon of hope, a man whose intellect seemed to transcend the bounds of humanity's reach, guiding it toward the distant stars for salvation. On a chilly autumn evening, Ethan stood at the edge of his observatory's massive viewing window, gazing out into the vast ocean of space. His silhouette, illuminated only by the soft glow of distant constellations, hinted at a burden too heavy for most to bear. The brilliant astrophysicist had been wrestling with more than just astronomical data. He grappled with a gnawing fear that his recent work could alter the course of human history or end it. The night he disappeared, the scientific community buzzed with confusion and concern. No farewell, no explanations, just an empty office and a series of unfinished calculations that hinted at his next big project. Rumors quickly spread that Dr. Vale had taken up residence in a classified space station orbiting Neptune, working in isolation on something monumental. Back on Earth, his absence cast a long shadow over his family. His son, Michael Vale, a young astrophysicist at the dawn of his career, felt the weight of his father's legacy as acutely as the absence of the man himself. Michael had grown up idolizing Ethan, each of his father's achievements a star in the vast constellation of their shared sky. Yet, Ethan's disappearance left a black hole in Michael's world, sucking in any warmth their relationship might have once held. As news of his father's disappearance settled into grim acceptance, Michael continued his work at the International Space Research Institute, where whispers of his father's fate stirred a restless curiosity in him. Unlike others, Michael wasn't content with speculation. He needed answers. His father's enigmatic legacy was not just a puzzle to solve. It was a challenge to the son he had left behind. The world watched and waited, hopeful and desperate, as Earth's hourglass continued to spill its final grains of sand. Unbeknownst to them, Michael was quietly stepping out from under his father's towering shadow, preparing for a journey that would lead him not only across the solar system but into the depths of his own uncharted potential. As the stars twinkled above, a plan began to form, one that would take him closer to the answers he sought and perhaps, finally, to the father he thought he'd lost. Michael Vale's brilliance was unmistakable, a shining testament to the genetic and intellectual legacy passed down by his father. Yet, in the scientific community and beyond, he was perennially viewed through the prism of Dr. Ethan Vale's extraordinary accomplishments. This perception often cast a shadow over Michael's own achievements, creating an invisible barrier that separated him from his peers. Michael spent his days at the International Space Research Institute, his fingers dancing across keyboards and his eyes scanning lines of data that could perhaps one day rival his father's contributions to science. However, despite his dedication and passion, he often felt like he was walking in a preordained path, one carved out by the legendary exploits of his father. The expectations were colossal, and the pressure to not only match but surpass Ethan Vale was a silent, constant companion. In his private moments, Michael wrestled with a complex web of emotions. There was pride, of course, pride in the name he carried and the intellect he had inherited. But there was also a deep-seated resentment, a smoldering anger for being left behind, both literally and metaphorically. Ethan's disappearance, his choice to pursue his groundbreaking project in solitude, felt to Michael like the ultimate abandonment. One evening, while reviewing satellite transmissions at his lab, Michael stumbled upon an anomaly, a faint signal emanating from the direction of Neptune. This discovery quickened his pulse and set his mind racing. The signal bore the unique signature of his father's last known project. For Michael, it was as if the stars themselves had whispered a secret, a clue meant only for him. Driven by a newfound purpose, Michael began to advocate within the Institute for a mission to investigate the source of the signal. His colleagues were initially skeptical, hesitant to pour resources into what could be a wild goose chase. But Michael, with a fervor that surprised even himself, argued persuasively about the potential benefits of the mission, not just to find his father, but to potentially unlock new energy resources that could save their failing planet. After weeks of relentless pursuit, his efforts paid off. The Institute's board approved the mission, designating Michael as the lead scientist. It was a monumental task, and for the first time in his life, Michael felt that he was stepping out from under his father's shadow, not to leave it behind, but to confront it, to understand it, and maybe to reconcile with it. As preparations for the mission began, Michael threw himself into the work with an intensity that left little room for doubt. He knew the risks were immense, the journey long and fraught with unknowns. Yet, there was also an undercurrent of excitement, a sense of destiny that seemed to propel him forward. This was his chance to answer the questions that had haunted him, to fill the void his father had left behind, and perhaps to finally stand as his own man in the light of distant stars. As Earth continued its slow dance toward decay, Michael Vale's mission was set into motion. The air at the International Space Research Institute was thick with anticipation and apprehension. The mission to Neptune wasn't just another scientific endeavor. It was a desperate grasp at potential salvation, a shot in the dark based on a faint signal that only Michael seemed to fully believe in. The construction of the spacecraft, named Etheris, was an undertaking that consumed countless hours and demanded the expertise of the world's finest engineers and scientists. It was designed to withstand the harsh realities of deep space travel, the cosmic radiation, the bone-chilling cold, and the oppressive solitude. Michael supervised every detail, his presence a constant in the humming corridors of the assembly facility. He knew that each bolt, each circuit, each panel was a step closer to his father. As the launch day approached, Michael's nights became restless. He was haunted by dreams of infinite space and distant worlds. His father's face would appear in these dreams, always just out of reach, obscured by the shadows of celestial bodies or the glare of a distant sun. Michael awoke each morning with a renewed sense of urgency, a burning need to bridge the gap between dream and reality. The media swarmed around the upcoming mission, drawn by the allure of the mysterious signal and the drama of the prodigal son venturing into the unknown to possibly retrieve or confront his lost father. Michael became a reluctant figurehead, his image plastered across screens and papers, his mission dissected and debated in endless cycles. He bore the attention with a stoic grace, focusing on the work, on the mission, on the silent call from the stars that only he seemed fully attuned to. Finally, the day of departure arrived. The Etheris stood on the launch pad, a gleaming arrow pointed at the heavens, surrounded by the buzz of last-minute preparations and the palpable tension of the watching crowd. Michael, clad in his flight suit, felt the weight of the moment settle upon him. This was not just his journey. It bore the hopes and fears of all who watched, all who wondered about their place in the cosmos. Inside the command module, as the countdown began, Michael's thoughts turned inward. He thought of his father, brilliant, distant, lost. He imagined their reunion, the conversations they might have, the explanations he might receive. But more than anything, he thought of the answers he sought, to questions about his father's work, his disappearance, and the mysterious project near Neptune. As the engines ignited, sending roars through the atmosphere and fire into the sky, Michael felt a profound connection to everything his father had stood for. With his hands steady at the controls, he steered the Etheris into the black ocean above, each second taking him further from Earth and closer to the unknown variables of space, where his father awaited, somewhere among the quiet giants of the outer solar system. The journey had begun, not just across the physical space between planets, but through the tangled orbits of past regrets and future possibilities. As Earth receded into the distance, Michael felt a stirring of something immense. Not just distance, but understanding, perhaps, waiting at the far reaches of his journey. Michael's journey through the void between the planets was marked by a silence that was both profound and unnerving. Aboard the Etheris, the hum of machinery and the occasional chirp of computers punctuated the emptiness, reminders of the fragile bubble of earthly technology hurtling through the cosmos. He navigated through the asteroid belt with a deft precision, his mind always on the charts and data streaming in. But his thoughts wandered back to his father, the enigmatic Dr. Ethan Vale. The deeper into space Michael traveled, the more he felt the isolation of his mission. His only companions were the recorded messages from Mission Control and the crew back on Earth, their voices a tether back to a world he was leaving farther behind with each passing second. The weight of solitude pressed upon him, a constant test of his resolve and mental fortitude. It was in these stretches of isolation that Michael often turned to the logs and reports his father had left behind. Deciphering them became both a mission and a solace. As Etheris neared Neptune, the planet loomed large and blue, a marble swirled with white clouds in the vast black sea of space. Neptune's orbit was a frontier few had breached, and as the ship approached the secretive space station where his father was rumored to be, tension mounted. Hidden among Neptune's moons, shrouded in secrecy, the station, known only as N-Base, represented mankind's furthest reach into the solar system and its greatest ambitions. The space station was unlike anything Michael had ever seen. It was a conglomerate of modules and appendages designed for deep space endurance and scientific exploration. Its exterior bore the scars of micrometeorite impacts and the harsh radiation environment of deep space. As he docked Etheris with N-Base, Michael felt a surge of anticipation mixed with dread. What would he find aboard? What had kept his father here, so far from home, so isolated from the world? Upon entering the station, Michael was struck by the stillness that pervaded the corridors. The air was stale, recycled too many times, filled with the ghostly echoes of past occupants. He navigated the labyrinthine passageways, each turn taking him deeper into the heart of his father's domain. The station was supposed to be unmanned ahead of his arrival, a mere outpost awaiting his retrieval and investigation. Yet, as he moved through the modules, there was an unmistakable sense of recent habitation. Tools were not quite stowed, displays blinked with ongoing operations, signs of life that were fresh, not abandoned. In his father's personal quarters, Michael found the most telling clues. Notebooks filled with scribbled equations, walls lined with digital screens flashing data from experiments so advanced they barely made sense, and a single, framed photograph of him as a child with Ethan, taken just before everything changed. It was here, surrounded by the remnants of his father's life and work, that Michael felt closest to understanding the man he had come so far to find. As Michael pieced together the logs and data, a clearer picture began to emerge of what Ethan had been doing. The project was vast, aiming to harness and convert Neptune's atmospheric energies into a form usable back on Earth. But the implications were frightening. The scale of energy involved was immense, and the potential for catastrophe was significant. It appeared Ethan had grappled with the morality of his work, caught between his duty to science and his fear of the consequences. In that solitude, among the whispers of a space station haunted by ambition and regret, Michael began to understand the weight that had driven his father to seclusion. He realized that the signal that had brought him here was not just a beacon, but a warning. As he prepared to confront the full reality of his father's legacy, Michael was no longer just a son or a scientist, but a keeper of dangerous, transformative knowledge. As Michael navigated the sprawling, silent corridors of the N-Base, the evidence of his father's continued presence grew increasingly undeniable. Ethan Vale, the brilliant but reclusive scientist, had transformed this remote station into a labyrinthine laboratory where his groundbreaking experiments on cosmic energy seemed to border on the brink of ethical science. The magnitude of his work lay heavy in the air, almost palpable in the cold, mechanical confines of the station. With each step, Michael's anticipation built, tempered by a growing apprehension about the nature of the reunion with his father. Questions swirled in his mind, questions about abandonment, about the monumental risks of Ethan's experiments, and about their fractured relationship. These thoughts were abruptly interrupted when he finally found his father, not through the dramatic reveal he might have imagined, but through a simple, almost accidental encounter in the main control module. Ethan was absorbed in his work, his back to the door, as Michael entered. The older man's posture was stooped, weighed down not just by physical age, but by the burdens of his profound isolation and the enormity of his scientific pursuits. At the sound of footsteps, Ethan turned slowly, his expression one of guarded curiosity that shifted into shock as he recognized his son. For a moment, time seemed to suspend, the hum of the station's life support systems the only sound in a tableau framed by starlight and shadows. The reunion was initially tense, filled with a mix of profound relief and unresolved anger. Michael struggled with his conflicting emotions: relief at seeing his father alive, anger for the years of silence, confusion over the moral implications of Ethan's work. Ethan, for his part, appeared weary and worn. Yet there was a flicker of something else in his eyes, perhaps remorse, perhaps a cautious hope. The conversations that followed were fraught with technical explanations and personal revelations. Ethan spoke of his research with a fervor that belied his physical frailty. He had devised a method to extract energy from Neptune's turbulent atmosphere, a potential solution to Earth's energy crisis. However, the risks were enormous. Uncontrolled, the energy could trigger catastrophic climatic effects, potentially worse than the slow death Earth was already facing. As father and son delved into the technical morass of the project, their dialogue shifted, slowly bridging the chasm that had grown between them over the years. Michael brought his own expertise to bear, challenging his father's assumptions, proposing modifications to mitigate the risks. Together, they reviewed data, simulated outcomes, and debated fiercely. In these moments, their bond was reignited, forged anew in the crucible of shared purpose and mutual respect for each other's capabilities. Yet, beneath the surface of their scientific collaboration, there was an unspoken acknowledgement of the personal stakes involved. They were not merely scientists working on a project. They were a family trying to salvage what could be salvaged from years of separation and silence. As they worked through the night, the station seemed less like a mausoleum of Ethan's solitude and more like a beacon of hope. However, with each solution they devised, new dangers emerged, and with them, the looming question of whether the potential benefits justified the risks. As dawn approached on Earth far below, Michael and Ethan faced a decision that would not only determine the outcome of their mission, but would also define the future trajectory of their restored relationship. In the dim, artificial glow of N-Base, Michael and Ethan toiled tirelessly, their minds locked in a continuous battle against the complexities of their project and the ticking clock of Earth's impending energy crisis. As they delved deeper into the mechanics of harnessing Neptune's volatile atmospheric energies, the space around them, filled with the hum of computers and the occasional clank of machinery, seemed to shrink, concentrating the tension and enormity of their task. Ethan's theory, revolutionary yet fraught with peril, proposed to convert the planet's intense storms into sustainable energy to be beamed back to Earth. The technology, however, was untested on such a scale, and every simulation they ran laid bare the thin line they tread between salvation and devastation. Michael, ever the pragmatist, pushed for additional safeguards, layers of fail-safes that might prevent a catastrophic miscalculation. Ethan, driven by desperation and the ticking clock of his own mortality, argued for speed and decisiveness. Their debates, intense and passionate, echoed through the sterile halls of the station. As they worked, the relationship between father and son evolved. Respect, long withheld, began to form, not just for each other's intellect, but for the burdens each had borne. Michael began to see the weight his father had carried, a weight not just of scientific duty, but of profound loneliness and isolation. Ethan, in turn, recognized the strength and maturity in Michael, qualities that had been forged in the absence of his father, in the silent spaces of unspoken resentments. But it was not just their relationship that was tested. As they neared a breakthrough, an alarm sounded, a stark, piercing reminder of the dangers they faced. A test conversion had escalated beyond expected parameters, threatening to destabilize the station's energy core. Together, they raced against time to implement a containment protocol, their actions synchronized, a dance of urgent precision. In the aftermath, as the immediate danger ebbed, the station settling back into its usual rhythm of quiet operation, the gravity of their undertaking settled heavily upon them. They had glimpsed firsthand the destructive potential of Ethan's discovery, a vivid echo of the larger, looming threats their solutions posed to Earth itself. The near disaster served as a grim reminder of the stakes involved. Sitting side by side in the control room, watching Neptune's swirling atmosphere on the monitors, father and son shared a moment of quiet reflection. Words were unnecessary. Their shared glance spoke volumes of the fear and resolve intermingling in their hearts. Determined to see their work through, but equally aware of the potential consequences, they pressed on, refining their approach, enhancing their models. Michael introduced a novel algorithm that could potentially modulate the energy extraction process, minimizing the risks of uncontrolled escalation. Ethan, impressed and somewhat humbled by his son's ingenuity, worked alongside him to integrate this new safety mechanism into the system. As the project neared completion, the station no longer felt like a cold outpost at the edge of human reach, but rather a crucible in which their renewed relationship and a potential future for humanity were simultaneously being forged. They had come to understand that their scientific endeavor was more than a mere technical challenge. It was a moral one, requiring them to balance their aspirations with their responsibilities, their hopes with their fears. With the final test looming, Michael and Ethan prepared to face whatever outcomes their efforts might yield, knowing that their actions could either doom or save their world. The isolation of space, once a barrier, had become the backdrop against which they confronted their ultimate challenge, standing together, not just as scientists, but as father and son. As the world slowly turned beneath the distant stars, the Etheris began its homeward journey, leaving behind Neptune's enigmatic blue vastness and the silent, watchful presence of N-Base. Michael Vale, aboard the returning vessel, carried with him not just the results of his groundbreaking mission, but also the profound lessons of reconciliation and personal growth gained from his time in space. Michael's return to Earth was met with jubilation and relief. Humanity had been granted a potential lifeline, a new method to harness energy that could lead to a rebirth of their struggling civilization. The news spread like wildfire, igniting hope in the hearts of millions who had watched the skies with bated breath, awaiting news from the edge of the solar system. As he stepped out of the spacecraft, Michael was not the same man who had left Earth months before. The weight of his experiences, the intense collaboration and confrontation with his father, and the daunting responsibilities they had tackled together had transformed him. He had departed as a scientist in the shadow of his father's legacy, but returned as a pioneer in his own right, a leader who had stared into the abyss and carried back the promise of salvation. The reunion with his earthbound colleagues was poignant, marked by handshakes and hard-earned smiles. Yet, as the celebrations ensued, Michael's thoughts drifted to his father, Ethan, who had chosen to remain behind at N-Base. Their parting was a complex tapestry of emotions: pride, sorrow, understanding, and unresolved questions that might never be answered. Ethan's decision to stay was driven by his commitment to oversee the stabilization of the new energy system, a task he could not entrust to anyone else. In his heart, Michael understood and respected this choice, recognizing it as the culmination of his father's journey, both as a scientist and as a guardian of humanity's future. In the days that followed, Michael engaged in debriefings and interviews, his story inspiring a new generation. Schools and universities discussed his mission, using it as a beacon to ignite passion for science and exploration in young minds. Documentaries and articles proliferated, capturing the drama of the mission and its implications for human destiny. But beyond the public eye, in the quiet moments of reflection, Michael contemplated the broader implications of their work. The technology they had developed was powerful, and with power came great responsibility. He knew that the future would be fraught with challenges as humanity learned to wield this new energy source safely. The ethical dilemmas and potential dangers they had grappled with on N-Base were not resolved but merely paused, awaiting new minds and new solutions. As Michael looked up at the stars, now familiar and less daunting, he felt a connection not just to his father, but to the greater human endeavor. He understood that his return was not the end of the journey, but the beginning of a new chapter in human history, one filled with as much potential for wonder as for warning. In the epilogue of this great celestial endeavor, the Earth did not merely spin. It pulsed with the collective heartbeat of its inhabitants, each beat a testament to the enduring human spirit, forever reaching toward the stars, guided by the legacy of those who dared to bridge the infinite.